Dr. LYNNE KITEI with us tonight on Ground Zero. It's the Phoenix Lights 25 years later. This week, actually. For me, Lynn, it was a very traumatic experience. The whole Phoenix Lights thing was traumatic for me because I remember Ground Zero had just started. We've been at it for about 2 years. And I was still young and impressionable. And all of a sudden I start this show about all this. Art Bell was pretty popular at the time too. So we get the information from Art Bell. We get the information not just from Art Bell, but it was in USA Today. It was all over the news about these lights in Phoenix, and people were alarmed by this. And we even remember Fife Symington and several other people that were involved with this. Tell us a little bit about, what you remember and then what progress has been made in investigating this.
Okay, so I want to get back to Raising because there's a reference to my character, the only one in the entire movie.
Oh, okay, sure.
And UFOs, 10 years before the mass sighting. And you just saw it at the press conference afterwards. And the cinematographer went on to do Big, and when Harry Met Sally and whatever, he also created and directed the Men in Black series, which opened the year of the mass sighting in 1997. So there's little coincidences.
So,
anyway,
it's a synchronicity. You're full of synchronicities, for sure.
Well, there's so many. And you mentioned, actually, some of the coincidences with Clinton and with a satellite going down that night and DEFCON 3 and on all that stuff. But anyway, on March 13th, for anyone that doesn't know out there, and by the way, I should say right off, and that was one of the reasons I came forward after 7 years of anonymity and a lot of soul searching. I did not want to come forward. But after having a 750-page journal, after pushing my entire medical career aside for 7 years to find a logical explanation, which I have yet to find, it was imperative to come forward to set the record straight. Number one, there has not been not one credible report of harm, threat, or abduction associated with the Phoenix Lights phenomena. Can't speak for other things, but I can about the Phoenix Lights, and if we have time, we can get into how it affected people at such a deep soul level in real time and long term. People were in awe and wonder and curious and excited, and actually, I have more people tell me that they feel blessed to have had the experience.
Well, when I say it's traumatic, I don't mean that I was scared of it. It made me pensive. It made me feel like there was something greater, something bigger. And and not only that, but there were so many things going on at the time. And I even mentioned in my monologue earlier about the Heaven's Gate cult that happened around the same time. And it may have been a signal for them. Who knows? But it was a very huge experience. And it's hard to believe that not very many people know about it, that it was such a big sighting, made all the papers. People were speculating about it. It was a government investigation and everything. And I just feel sometimes it just doesn't get a fair shake.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's another reason I came forward, because there is so much mis and disinformation. On March 13th, and I had been documenting them, by the way, for 2 years prior, up close and personal, the only one with 35 millimeter. If viewers want to get and audience want to get onto the Phoenix Lights Network website, have a unique collection of 35 millimeter. They're in the negative, cannot be explained or denied by military university optical experts to this day, prior to, during, and after the mass sighting. From our vantage point, we're pretty high on the mountain up here. But on March 13th, 1997, while thousands of people were outside purposely on a very beautiful night looking up at the sky at the Hale-Bopp comet, they also got a glimpse of one, and it's amazing. I think the last time that we got together was in Oregon. Is that with the McMinnville?
We've seen each other in McMinnville, but we were in Indian Wells. I think it was in Indian Wells last time we got together. Right.
But at that particular weekend, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Phoenix Lights.
Right. Peter
Peter Davenport, he's the director of the National UFO Reporting Center, divulged that from his data from 20 years, that one of these objects that people were seeing, and we're talking about orbs that seem to be attached to something or actual craft, and I'm going to get to that, was 8 miles wide. And I had many people tell me that, 1, 2, 3, even 4 miles wide, but I thought he was kidding. And he has since, publicized it as well. And we're talking about rooftop level, these formations of lights, orbs, that seem to be attached to something or at a force field holding them in rock solid formation, V, boomerang, triangle formation, gliding very, very slowly, about 30 miles an hour, totally silent. I mean, we're talking technology that we have not seen in 25 years. Some of these objects, and again, there were craft. If you go to the Phoenix Lights Network website, go to the GAP page, Geospatial Animation Project, beautiful illustrations and animations, a 12-year study. 2 or more people had to see the same craft. And at the end of the study, it was discovered that there were 10 different craft, and they really look different, okay, if you look at the illustrations.
Sure.
But whether it was one craft that could morph, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade. And that was the ultimate conclusion, because it wasn't just 1 or 2 events, as you would hear in the media. It was many events over a dozen hours, starting at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, daylight sightings in Arizona, reported in New Mexico by Native Americans the 5 o'clock hour, 7 o'clock hour and beyond in California, 10 and 11 o'clock hour. There were 2 commercial airline pilots that reported to radar that they were seeing one of these massive craft cover Las Vegas. And the sightings continued all the way till 5:30 the next morning, when a Boeing crew was coming into Sky Harbor International Airport and saw one of these over-mile-wide craft right over their tarmac. There is so much of the story. Yes, most people were outside between 8 and 10, and that's why most of the calls came in to the news and so forth. But the sighting itself was so much more far-reaching, over a dozen hours, over 4 states. And not only that, again, going back to the technology, if you look at that page, the GAP page, you'll see that one of these crafts split in 2 and shot straight up. And again, 2 or more people had to see the same craft to be in the study. Other people saw these orbs detach from the main object, went out into the environment, and then redocked with it later. If you go to the photo page and look at my closed sighting in 95, not only did I take the closed orbs on 35 millimeter, but this has all been analyzed. The same exact phenomena are in the same exact location in the distance, confirmed in 97, 2 months before the mass sighting and the morning after the mass sighting, by air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport, to me personally, of hovering over Class B restricted airspace. And the military was well aware what was happening, because at 3 a.m. the following morning, after the mass sighting, or during the mass sighting actually, there is a recording that we have a part of it in our documentary. An alleged crewman from Luke Air Force Base called Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center to report in great detail, very professional, that jets were sent off from Luke Air Force Base to intercept the gun camera film, which I heard that they did. I haven't seen it, but I heard they did, of one of these over-mile-wide craft hovering right over central Phoenix about 8:30 that evening. As they got close, now here's some of the technology, the lights started to dim, and the entire craft blinked out and disappeared. And the alleged crewman said that he had to help one of the pilots out of his craft because he was so shaken up by it, and that Luke was on lockdown after that. So they were very, very aware what was happening. What's very interesting is that after all this happened, and we're talking, some people said they could have thrown a rock at it. It was, these craft were so close, or these orbs. There was no investigation, as far as we knew. There was no explanation. They really put a lid on it for months.
Right.
In fact, it wasn't until May when the former Phoenix Vice Mayor, Councilwoman Frances Barr, went innocently, she didn't see it, but she had so many people, over 1,000 people, called her to say, why isn't there an investigation? She asked for one, and she was blasted by the media.
Well, we're going to talk more about this with Dr. LYNNE KITEI. It's a fascinating story about the 1997 Phoenix Lights. 25 years ago this week it happened, and certainly an amazing story that needs to be reported and talked about many times over so we can find out the truth.